I crack up with that guy on Clav. I'm thinking, my God, dude. I will tell you, to a lot of people's surprise, I'm a pretty liberal guy. I was the one that kind of fell in love with the tradition of the church and the ceremonies of the church, the liturgies. Believe it or not, I had a brown belt in judo many years ago. Okay.
Great. All right. All right. Awesome. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm here with another segment of the Table Talk session. This time it's the first segment that we're doing virtually. I've only done these in person just because I've only done it with a few people so far in my area. This is the first time I'm doing it with someone outside my area. So here we have James Lemas. I pronounced that last name correct?
Yes,
Perfect.
sir.
Perfect. Awesome. So James why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, James? Let the people know
Okay.
who you are. Hey everyone, before we continue the segment, don't forget to subscribe, like, dislike, leave a positive comment, leave a negative comment. I don't care. Thanks for watching, and now on to the program.
Hi guys, I am James Lemas. I actually am the chief finance and administrative officer for a Roman Catholic parish, and I'm in Tucson, Arizona. Good old Tucson. It's pretty sunny today. um, and I have been actually in my current role for, oh my goodness, going on 18 years. I have quite a complex professional background, though. I believe it or not, I started in the church when I'm a product of Catholic school education. So actually, the place I work now, ironically, but I didn't start in kindergarten. I started in third grade. So right after high school, I did enter the Roman Catholic seminary. I was discerning the Catholic priesthood. And so I spent 3 years there and went to Europe, spent a year in Europe, and then decided it was time for a summer off. And well, the rest is history. So, but ironically, I work back now just in a different position. We always used to joke that I'd come back as pastor, but instead, I still say I'm pretty much the pastor. But anyway, after I left the seminary, I actually got a degree in financial accounting and then an MBA. And I had a long career with Wells Fargo as an indirect auto lender and a regional credit manager. So I did that for about 8 or 9 years. And then got kind of tired of that. It kind of wore its course. And I went into business with my father for a little while. I was in the indirect auto division of Wells Fargo, which, for those of you who don't know what that is, when you go to an auto dealer and you buy a car and you go into the finance office, well, all the banks are bidding on those contracts. So we worked with dealers, not so much consumers, and so purchasing auto contracts. When I left there, I got into business with my dad on the car side and ran an independent dealership here in Tucson for a little while with my dad. We closed it in 2008 with all the financial stuff that happened, and ironically, I ended up working back for the church. So full circle. So that's a little bit about me.
Very nice, very nice. Very extensive background, very credible, as some might say. The first question I typically like to ask people is basically revolves around the lines of what essentially can you point as being a defining moment or defining aspects of your upbringing that may have led you to this point or a point in your life that essentially kind of makes you proud of, mentioning that moment in life. It doesn't have to necessarily be, the present moment. It could be, work you've done in the past. It could be your current work. Given that it's very, faith based, I can only imagine that, has to do with, the household you were raised in, your upbringing as a Catholic. So kind of, give us the intake on that.
Sure. Actually, yeah, I would say for sure it was where I'm at now as a result of my upbringing. Believe it or not, my mom and dad were We're all Catholic, yeah, but they were more the Christmas and Easter Catholics, hit the high holy days, go to church. I was the one that kind of fell in love with the tradition of the church and the ceremonies of the church, the liturgies and stuff. So I was really a naughty boy in Catholic school. So back when they could paddle, we can't do that anymore. But it's too bad, right? Sometimes. But I would say that for sure, faith has always been a part of my life. Even when I left the seminary, that was it was a hard time for me. I mean, even to this day, I still wonder what would have happened if I would have stayed in. And but I'm a person of faith, and I do believe that God takes us where we're supposed to be. And sometimes we just don't understand it at the moment, and then it kind of it makes itself known to you, and you're like, ah, okay. So I guess to answer that question, I would say that yeah, faith has always been the center for me, and it probably was built on at a young age. And my you know, the Catholics, for those of your audience that are not Catholic, the Roman Catholics, we have a system of beliefs, one that is central to our faith. And so when you see what they call the Mass, the priest is taking water and wine, and Catholics actually believe that in that liturgy becomes the body and blood of Christ, both in his mind, power, soul, divinity, fully present, right? It's called transubstantiation. And so I did have a little bit of experience with that when I was a young man in the school, probably fourth or fifth grade. And we were in something called adoration, which is where you go over to church with your class and they're presenting the host, which is the bread, in this beautiful, elaborate thing called a monstrance. And you reflect and you pray. Well, I actually just realized that yeah, this is true at a very young age. So I kind of point to that as one of the reasons I remain Catholic because I had that experience, and then obviously through the years and through being with other people, I and obviously studying the faith in depthly, not just the Catholic faith, but many other faiths. I've come to realize that yeah, God exists 100%, no doubt in my mind. For me, it's Jesus Christ, right? But Jesus, you hear a lot of Protestants say, "Oh, well, the only way, to salvation is to believe in Jesus Christ." I actually believe that. But I also believe that Christ reveals himself in many, many ways through many faiths. And as long as we're all on the same road and the tenets of a religion are unconditional love and living a good life and the golden rule, right? Treat on to others as you would want to be treated. I like to reflect on like what our former Pope, Pope Francis, is famous for saying, "Who am I to judge?" God rest his soul. He's a great Pope. So is this one. But so yeah, so trust me, when I was a young man, Catholic Church is still a little bit rigid and judgmental, can be at times, right? Our history is very dark. The only perfect thing about the Catholic Church is our founder, Jesus Christ, sure. And so, but I for sure can say that, yeah, I mean, God is real. So I would say the thing that drives me and gets me up every morning is that I know this life is, helping me get to the next one. People say, why do you work for the church? You could make so much more money. And trust me, I used to. I was blessed enough to have a decent career as a young person and able to do that now. And I go to work every day and I feel like I'm giving back to the community, right? We have a Catholic school where I'm at, K through 8, so about 350 kids in school. And so I feel like every day I go home and I feel like, I'm making the world a better place and I'm forming the future of our church and our world. Yeah, I rambled a little bit there, but I would say for me the driving factor now in my life is definitely God. And as I was saying, I'm working for the church now, not so much for the money, but for the retirement plan because that's eternal, right?
No, yeah, no, that's all great. That I love hearing all that. Especially what really struck out when you have the ability to mention, where the community that you're in, being a Catholic, has its, dark past. And I wouldn't say it's just, for Catholics. I'd say, every group ever, has its moments where, terrible things were done by individuals within those groups. Um, off of what you just explained, though, would you say that since your parents were more so, I'd say, secular in a sense, um, did you feel that you naturally came to a more faith-driven way of looking about being a Catholic, or would you say that there was like a moment, a a defining moment where you were like, you know what, it's not for me. It's not just, was it a very conscious moment, or was it a very long span of like realizations that like, okay, like it's not just about, the visualizations of, Christmas or Easter, or, even
Mhm.
just only going to church. It's, having this, you know, inner feeling within you, talking to you at all times, reassuring you that, there is, way more to this life than, what we're able to see around us.
Yeah, that's a great question. We have some rituals in the church. One of them is called the Advent wreath, and when you're talking about as a kid, the Advent wreath. So Advent is the 4 weeks that precede Christmas, and it's customary for Catholics as well as people in their homes, families, to gather around a wreath and light the candles as the weeks progress. Kind of like what the Jewish people do with the oh gosh, it escapes me, but the candles is it the Manar? I may not, that may not be right.
I don't remember either.
Yeah,
It's all good.
but you can see it. It's very reflective. It's on their flag and things. And so we kind of do that in anticipation of Christmas. Well, being in a Catholic school, and I was kind of wanting to become a priest at a very young age. I was an altar boy and stuff, so I would be kind of the one to drag my family and say, "We're going to do this." So in a way, I feel like I kind of with my parents for sure were responsible for putting me in the Catholic school, but I kind of fell in love with everything about the Catholic Church. And so yes, it was progressive, especially as I learned the theology more in depth. As you get older, you study more of the theology of it and the philosophy when I went to seminary. So I would say it was progressive and but it was planted in that we were Catholic and we ended up in the Catholic school. So I credit my parents for that. Actually, more my grandmother, God rest her soul. She's the one that took me to mass all the time when my mom and dad didn't want to, and I'd spend the night at her house. So I think she really fed into my fascination with what was happening in that hour at church. And so I think that's probably why I am and so tied to my church. I also started working there. It was my very first job where I'm at now, believe it or not. I was what is called a sacristan. So as a young man in high school, I would clean the pews after the services on Sunday. I was paid a little bit of money, and so I got to be involved in like some church, work as a very young man. And so I would say just being around it a lot. And even when I left to the secular world, I was still a regular member in a Catholic church where I lived when I lived up in Scottsdale. So yeah, I would say yeah, that I would say it was instilled in me in a very young age. And then it was I figured it out as I went along through the different experiences in life.
Very nice, very nice. Yeah, I mean, it is crazy how, we think so, moments in life pass us and we're thinking of it as one way, and then our experiences start to shape us and it brings us back to, I don't want to speak for everyone, obviously, but, for me specifically, I definitely, yeah, I was born and raised and still am a Muslim. And
Mhm.
and I grew up going to the mosque all the time, going to the school at the mosque. My mother is a very faithful religious woman. My dad tries really hard to follow in her footsteps. Um, to this day, she's always, anytime I'm leaving the house, she's like, don't forget your prayers, so on and so forth. I can't necessarily credit that, and not to say I can't credit, all of that energy being fed to me. And, you know, you might, it reminds me of when, you say something over and over again, it's bound to, come true. Or, it's because growing up, one thing that I would do, going to school every day, I would always ask God to give me knowledge every day. It turned into a habit. Sometimes I even still say it today. And I really do think I gained, knowledge, not just because of, not thinking of it in like a logical sense where, oh, I'm just going to tell myself this every day and it'll instill something within me to want to gain knowledge. I think life is a two-way road where it is us and, the divine guiding us. It's not just free will. It's not just, existentialism, or determinism. It's, you have, regardless of how many choices you have in life, you'll always have essentially, two options, what you think is right and what you think is wrong. Um, and it kind of makes me think about, what's going on a lot nowadays is, some would argue that the world has never been more full with nihilism. One thing that I was listening to something recently. Someone was explaining the guy Friedrich Nietzsche, and how he said that, God is dead essentially, and he wasn't necessarily making a argument against, religions or a moralistic argument. He was talking about how, as time, what he sees progressing in time is also this very nihilistic behavior within the individual. You see these people online who are who gain, mass followings, who only worry about, how they look, not worrying anything about, their morals, uh, trying to transcend internally versus, externally. It's only about, how does my jaw look today? If I'm the only one that I'm worried about, in the sense of, it's just me and I need to, make sure I'm the best. The moment someone who's better than me comes my way, it then starts to create these, weird sensations in the mind where you're like, okay, I thought I was the best, and it just goes to show that, when you have that sort of mentality, you know, all the, the talk of faith and all the talk of, and anytime, it's very transparent when you hear, a lot of people say, I want to thank God, blah blah blah, and it's like, you can tell when someone actually means it. Not like, I don't think, people don't have to say in front of crowds, they want to thank God. If they thank God, it's like an everyday feeling within you. It's inarguable, in a sense. It's, whatever happens in life, you continue to go on. So
Yeah,
how do you perceive, essentially what Nietzsche said about, God being dead? Because obviously, you believe in God, I believe in
hmm,
God, regardless of, of whatever sort of nihilistic, atheistic,
sure.
arguments are out there. Um,
It's great. I studied him in school, so I'm familiar. It's been a while since I've read him, but yes, I remember that's one of his most famous quotes. Honestly, I will tell you, to a lot of people's surprise, I'm a pretty liberal guy. Um, there's a few things, obviously, that I draw the line on as a Catholic, and as a not so much a Catholic, but I guess as a Christian, as a God-fearing person, and things that I believe about life and death and things like that. But on other things, I'm pretty liberal. And so one of the things that I do think the world has become very secular. I have watched that. I feel like my grandparents now, they're all passed away, but they used to say, "Oh, you remember when it was?" And that's true. I feel like even when I was younger, I'm 51. So I grew up in the 80s and 90s, and there's still more respect for things of the divine, or even your elders and things like that. And I think we've lost some of that. And I think a lot of it is due to social media. And exactly, you highlighted it. this need to be glamorous and to be popular and to be the best looking. I crack up with that guy on Clav, you know, I'm thinking, my God, dude,
That's exactly who I was referring to.
have your moment, and then what's going to happen when it's, you know, age is something. Trust me, man, I looked a lot different when I was 25. So I feel like, yes, there's too much connection to these things that are, you know, as I can speak with you as a faithful person, to the temporary. This is just part of our journey to the eternal. So I think some of us, and all of us, are guilty of it. Yeah, I mean, we all get caught up in what we're doing in our lives and our families, and it's important for sure, but it's supposed to teach us about getting us to that eternal reward. And so I one of the things, especially as a Christian, I I I frown so much on those that weaponize the scripture to justify horrible things. And I often say that some of these Christians that are so fervently beating their chests and, oh, Jesus and Jesus, if Christ descended today to the earth, they would be the first ones to put him on the cross again, because that's what they feel. They think that they are perfect and that they can judge. And nothing bothers me more than watching Christians specifically, actually all faiths, but I'm focusing on my group now, that weaponize scripture and weaponize Jesus, because the Jesus they believe in is the farthest thing from what he was and what his message was. He was turn the other cheek, love your neighbor as yourself, mercy, forgiveness, humility, you know? And so when you hear a lot of people, specifically politicians, that love to get on the channels and say, "Oh, you know, we have to do this because we're Christian." Yeah, but you're forgetting all that other bad stuff that you're doing. That's also something Jesus wouldn't do. So yeah, to answer your question, yeah, it's been interesting. And what's going on right now, you know, this thing, I saw something with this war, and I'm very much against all types of war. I mean, you know, as someone that's faithful, sometimes they're necessary, right, to defend yourself. But it's peace. You know, we live it, you know, it was different, in the beginning, biblical times, you know, you're fighting for the cause, and you don't have the intellect nor the experience of how to settle disputes. But we should not be blowing each other up anymore. There is no need to do that. And and it's sad that we're here. And especially, you know, they've said many times that we actually have the capability to blow this planet up like 36 times, you know. And it's just scary that you know, that that's where we're at. And so I'm very, very much against what's going on. I've been against many of the wars over time, you know. Um, you have a right to defend yourself, but we should be able to settle things as human beings, you know. And it's sad. So I feel like the product of a lot of it is people fighting for what they perceive to be the will of God, whatever God it is they follow, right? I mean, it happens on all levels. Christians are doing it now. I mean, all our faiths have been guilty of that at some time in history. You know, Catholics, the Crusades, we were killing you if you weren't a Christian. And so you know, I just feel like we've evolved enough as a human race that we should be able to equitably settle things. But when there's money and power, there's where the demons lie, you know. So
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. No, I couldn't agree more with everything you just said. It is the complexities that come with, you know, why we're here right now as humanity. You know, I always try to when it comes to, you know, war and conflict, I like to just always, you know, think about myself and how, you know, I would never go, you know, do anything, you know, offensively towards someone who hadn't done, you know, and it's weird because it really does play into the everyday behaviors one has, you know, towards life in general. It's the difference between knowing when to approach someone if you think that they are up to no good, or if, you know, if they are actually up to no good. You know, having it's one thing, you know, to be, you know, paranoid and worried. It's another thing to, you know, flat out uh start something that, you know, ends in death and destruction. And if there were times when I noticed someone and had a suspicious feeling about it, that's all that was, is a suspicious feeling. Like there's like it's not guilty until proven innocent. It's always the other way around. And even just with the complexities of you know leaders and governments, and how they address their subjects and their citizens, it's definitely come to a really weird place where people have the access to know exactly what's going on. And unfortunately with that, people don't have the unfortunately, as as pessimistic as this might sound, but when it comes to just um, doing just things, or people rising up or anything like that, it's we're at a point where uh, it does feel that those who run the world are steps ahead to where they can essentially prevent average people from doing the right things, if collectively they decide to do something, as what I would like to see, like a peaceful dissolution of some sort. I have no idea what that looks like. I'm just one person. I'm not a part of any group who's trying to do anything like this. But it is when if you and if you can't find the ability to stand up for what's yours, and have things that you stand for and that you know within you are true, um then it really does end in this sort of nihilistic destruction of humanity.
Yeah.
But I definitely, I keep faith, I keep hope. I for some odd reason, every day I pray that I wake up always better than the day before, not just in a sense of me being a better person, but me maintaining my ability to be who I am. Because one thing I fear is waking up and being someone totally different than who I am now. I've been blessed my entire life to essentially say that I live in euphoria. I make the most out of any situation that I'm going to be put in. God only knows if I would be able to handle stuff like bombs being dropped on my home, and living a life like that. But the life that I've been able to live so far, the 30 years I've been on this earth, I can safely say that I have no worries in the sense of what happens after this, in the sense of the afterlife. um
Amen.
yeah. But tell me a little bit about your time at Wells Fargo, and the
Yeah.
and getting into the banking and
Yeah.
financing
Yeah.
of your profession.
So when I left the seminary, I was going out to work, and I always wanted to be a bank teller. So I applied for a teller job here in Tucson for a bank called Arizona Bank. And they didn't have an opening, but I speak Spanish. So they said, we'll pay you more if you become a loan collector. I said, sweet. So I started loan collections with Arizona Bank, and then ended up staying there about a year, and then applied to a company called WFS Financial, which was a finance company that did auto loans. And so I moved over to them as a collector, and then that's where I stayed most of my career. WFS eventually got bought out by Wachovia, and then ultimately Wells Fargo. And so I worked. So the way banking in this area works is usually start in collections, because you figure out what the bad loans look like. And then once you have a background in collections, usually you move into credit. So that's kind of the path that I took. I will tell you something. Collecting was one of the things that at first it's not pleasant, but it sure teaches you how to deal with people in all states that they're in, especially angry people, and how to diffuse arguments and kind of get it where it needs to go. So I would credit a lot of my professional communication background based on that basis of dealing with unpleasant customers all day long. And so yeah, so after that, I then got into credit and ended up climbing up in management in the origination end, which is the credit extending. And so that was really good though. That was the first time I actually got out into the real world because I worked for the church, as I was saying before. And that foundation, working for a very large organization, it gave me my business acumen. And so I would say I credit them with that, and just a lot of experiences, getting to travel a lot. I was responsible, my region was Arizona and New Mexico. So I traveled quite a bit between all most of Arizona and parts of New Mexico. So yeah, it was a great time. I still have many friends there, and once in a while they're like, "Hey, do you want to come?" And I'm like, "No, no, I have checked that box on my resume." So, but it was great. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I have a knack for numbers. I'm a finance guy. I was actually, when I left the seminary, I was minoring in psychology, so I was gonna finish up a psychology degree, but I ended up falling into business and just naturally was an accounting guy. I actually do taxes. I have a side business where I do income taxes, so I'm busy. This is the busy time of year for me as well. So I enjoy numbers. I'm not your typical accountant though, with the pen, the pocket protector, and I actually have a personality. But so yeah, so I have for sure enjoyed. I enjoy the banking world. I dabble in stocks and things like that, so I do like a lot of that.
Nice. No, and
And I see you.
I
I
can
know you work
definitely.
for a U.S. bank, correct?
Yep, yeah,
Yeah, I
I
saw that on
worked
your
for US
LinkedIn.
Bank, been there, been with them since May of 23. Started my career at a regional bank here called Fifth Third Bank.
Yeah, I
Um,
know who they are.
yeah, yeah. I basically started off not in collections, but in a similar role,
Ah,
invest. I wouldn't say fraud investigations. It was definitely just taking calls, dealing with a lot of angry people. Really,
yeah.
like how you said, it gave you essentially the communication skills to do things like communicating with diverse people. And that's essentially, I definitely do credit my entry level experience at that company with where I'm at today. Of course, obviously, wouldn't be able to be in the position that I'm in right now without having that sort of experience before. But I also definitely think it's important to be in those positions to get an idea of what you actually want to do if you do want to stay in these sort of corporate environments. I definitely learned real quick that I wasn't going to stay in that specific role because I wanted to do other things. I wanted to
Hmm.
kind of like be my own person in a sense. And obviously it does boil down to a lot of who's your manager. Are they
Yes.
do they understand work life balance, stuff like that.
Hmm.
My entry level experience didn't come with a lot of that, unfortunately. Not that I didn't manage, but it definitely, with where I'm at right now, I definitely, pray all the time that, and thank God that, I'm in this position now because I do have a manager who does know work life balance and does allow me to be very flexible and doesn't like press me on anything,
Right.
doesn't ask like questions like if I use like sick time. He never asks, oh, are you feeling better? Like he knows that sick time a lot of the times is you just needing a day, or if you even have like kids you need to take care of, or anything of the sort. But yeah, no, I definitely relate to being in those, sort of tough environments mentally, essentially. Obviously,
Sure.
there's nothing really physical about it, but the mental aspect of just getting through, talking to people who, just are yelling at you all the time, trying to achieve goals that don't necessarily, feel that they are accomplishable within the time frame that you're given. But going through that is definitely hardens you in the way that you
Yes.
should, if you're going to be this type of person who is good with numbers, communicates important stuff like finances to other people around you. So yeah, no, that's all
Yeah.
really good.
you said something that's very true. I was very young when I was 20, I want to say 21, 22 when I started in banking. And I will tell you, you touched on management, and that is so true. The reason I was able to get promoted pretty quickly through the ranks at what is now Wells Fargo, um, is because of the people that I worked for, that were my direct supervisors, and then ultimately all the way up to the corporate level. Um, and so I learned really quick about that it's important. You know, I I learned who I like, the type of manager I like to work for, and the one I didn't. And so when I eventually got into the role of supervisor first, I drew on that knowledge of bad supervisors and good supervisors. And believe it or not, you can learn some stuff from the best. So, but I will say that I credit a lot of people because I was so young, and I definitely got promoted before I was ready at times. But because I had the backing and the support of the people that were asking me to apply for these positions, it helped me, and it was learning on the fly. And now as I reflect back on that as an older person now, yeah, I would say I got probably my managerial experience was developed at when I was at the bank. And obviously I'm still learning. I see all kinds of stuff. People think, oh, you work for the church all day, you sit around and pray the rosary. Mm-mm. Where there's people, there's problems. So part of my job where I'm at now is I'm the human resources manager for our site. So I've gotten to do a lot of stuff with that, which has very much shaped and helped me. And so I enjoy working with people, and I'm a good conflict manager. I'm good at resolving things. And I'm a good partner. So I work with a good leadership team where I'm at now. But as I look back, when you said that about bosses, yes, I've had some really bad ones. Ironically, they just were overexerting a particular competency too much. Some of that stuff you need. You got to be hard sometimes, right? But there's a balance of it. There's a balance, and each individual situation you're looking at is different. You can't just rubber stamp that this is how you manage people. Most of it is about listening and communication. That's where a lot of the problems break down, is lack of communication, too much communication. As I think about that, that's probably the thing that gets people into trouble the most on both ends, is lack of communication or oversharing. So yeah, but it's fun. It's fun. I enjoy the challenges. I do. Keeps work interesting.
Good, good. Yeah, and you said something a moment ago, just being good and whatnot. I definitely think, obviously one can't get through, you know, something like having bad bosses or, being in bad environments, or, being someone who is known to be like a good asset in, their working community. All definitely, you know, think ties back to the faith and having the intention of being faithful and being a good person. Obviously it everything is rooted in that, I believe. So and you mentioned you speak Spanish.
See?
Is that
Hmm.
did you learn that, or is it through family and heritage?
Yeah, a little bit of both. Believe it or not, I am one quarter Mexicano. It doesn't show. My dad is half Mexican. My grandfather was puro Mexicano. So we never spoken at home. My dad is fluent, but I had it all through school. And then when I was in seminary, our bishop sent us to a summer immersion program with the University of Arizona. So I actually got to live in Guadalajara for a summer, and that's how you learn it. No option, have to speak it. So yeah, so I enjoy that. And here in Southern Arizona, I mean, it's spoken in a lot of places. It's almost a necessity to have to know some Spanish to get along here in Tucson. So
Yeah, no, no, that's awesome. Being bilingual is, definitely, I think, one of the most rewarding aspects, humans can give to one another. I'm bilingual in
absolutely.
Arabic, so
Cool.
I try to speak it as, thanks. Yeah, I try to speak it as much as possible. I definitely, obviously going back to what you said, if you're going somewhere and you're staying somewhere, um, you're either going to, just naturally start learning the language because obviously that's what everyone's speaking. So, being here and even, spending, the time I do with my family,
Hmm.
there's I still need, a lot of work done on that specifically, because, obviously I don't get to speak it all the time. But definitely, going back to the heritage stuff and culture and
Yeah.
religion. um when you traveled, in
Hmm.
your time in Europe, and
Yes.
you have met, people of all different, backgrounds,
Hmm.
coming from, Catholic faith, I'm sure
Right.
other faiths as well.
Yes.
um do, how do you, kind of going back to the whole, nihilistic stuff and whatnot,
Yes.
do you see, um do you, not to just, make it so, like, you know black and white, in the sense of, oh, do you see, people who are, do you see more nihilism, in your travels, or do you see, more people directed, by the faith and whatnot? Because I do think that when it comes to, just these nuances and stuff, that, maybe someone might be having a bad day, it might, show a little
Sure.
bit of nihilism, or
Yes.
might um what's the word I'm looking for? Denounce faith, in a
Hmm.
sense, in that moment. And because I've been a couple places, too, before.
Hmm.
I've been to Jerusalem. I've been
Mm.
to
Cool.
the Sepulchre and the Nativity.
Nice.
There's
Want to
definitely,
get there.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I definitely, hope and recommend, everyone who, is anyone, goes there
Hmm.
and, experiences it. And just with, those places, and not just those specific places. Obviously, you have the Al-Aqsa Mosque and you have the Wailing Wall.
Yes.
They're definitely, you see tourists there, I think, a lot more than you do actual
Mhm.
people wanting to, practice their faith there.
Agreed.
And I mean,
Agreed.
obviously, one could argue it naturally comes this way as, humanity grows. People know this spot as a very popular spot, especially with, what happens there,
Yep.
who has authority to do things there and whatnot.
Hmm.
Arguably, the birth of civilization took place there. But obviously, it's not just there too, that, you see people that just want to go take pictures of these, buildings, and, tour around them. I'm sure you've
Yeah.
been many places in Europe where, there are these ancient, structures
Yep.
that, once housed people who
Yep.
collectively, you know not collectively prayed together. And that's subtly putting it. You have these group of people who are all thinking the same thing
Hmm.
in a structure. Is very powerful. And it really doesn't seem like, how it is today. Like, it's when you have, a group of people within a mosque or within a church these days. Everyone else has, like, everyone there has something else to worry about. Their phone's going off, they got work to do afterwards, they got to get somewhere to do that. And it's like,
Yep.
I think I definitely think the moments for faith have, you know sadly saying, we started to become more and more erased as time progresses.
Absolutely.
Because, and especially like right now, like I'm sure, it's the month of Ramadan.
Yes.
And
Yes. Praying for you
after
guys.
the I appreciate that so much. Thank you. Um, After the breaking of the fast, it is the what they call the Tarawih prayer. And
Hmm.
typically, when I was growing up, the Tarawih prayer consisted of the Imam reading the entire Quran throughout the whole month of
Wow.
Ramadan.
Wow.
I don't know, and I don't know how it's done, especially right now at the mosque that my family goes to, because typically the Tarawih prayer growing up would last until until early morning and
Ah,
sometimes until dawn.
awesome.
And now it ends at 9 because people have work the next day and so on and
Sure.
so forth. And it gets, I and one thing my mom, always, mentioned to me when it came to, the stuff that we do in our faith is, to have the intention to, drown out the noise and to be in the moment with, God and with your
Hmm.
prayers and, not thinking of anything else. And I think it's really hard nowadays. And I think a lot of that, does play into the whole nihilism thing. And I just,
Absolutely.
do, do you see the what I how I explain
Yep.
like the window
Mm,
of
yep.
being actually within the faith starting to erase more and more in a sense.
Yes, that's a very good point. And actually, I was in Europe in the 90s, 95 through school year 96. And even then, even more so. So, a lot of elaborate cathedrals in, Spain and France and Rome, right? The epicenter for Catholicism, St. Peter's Basilica at the Vatican. And you're right, very touristy. And I was shocked coming, even coming from America as a young man. I was shocked that the churches didn't have more people in Europe. I always thought, oh, there'll be a lot more Catholics in Europe. Actually, quite the opposite. Um, Italy itself has there's a lot of tension between, most of them are Catholic by name. However, they're not going to church, they're not doing the prayers. It's the tourists that are constantly flocking to these places to take pictures, not so much to go to mass, is what we call in our faith. The mass is the liturgy, the Sunday liturgy or the daily liturgy. And yeah, so I agree with you. A lot of that has been lost. We're going through like you all, it's Lent for us in Catholicism, which is the same type of thing. We fast, we give up things to try to focus more on our faith and where we're needing things we need to do to improve ourselves to get ready for Easter in our faith. And so, but you're right. One of the we're coming up on Holy Week. This is the fourth Sunday of Lent, so we have one more, and then Holy Week starts with Palm Sunday. And the night before Good Friday, it always used to be a night of all night adoration in the church before the Blessed Sacrament. But now it ends at 10. Because people are tired. And so I would say that I'd say it reminds me as a Christian of Jesus said to his disciples when he found them all sleeping after he told them to stay up and pray with him, can't you even give me an hour? So it's very true is that we try to fit in. Okay, well, I have to do my mass, because it's Sunday. I have to go to mass after this. I haven't been yet, so I'll go at 1. But for sure, even myself, at times I'm like, oh boy, I'm moving the mass around to fix the things that I need to do personally. And so I see that a lot. I think you're right. I think that the world and again, it's always kind of existed in our church. We call them the Christmas and Easter Catholics, like I was saying. Oh, we have to go to mass. Our churches are filled to the brims on, believe it or not, Ash Wednesday, which is not even a holy day, but they got to get the ashes. We always joke Catholics come to church when they get something: palms, ashes, and then on Christmas and Easter. Otherwise, you never see them. So we have some fun with that. But yeah, it is kind of sad because the church I work in fits 1,000 people. And yeah, we're lucky. I'd say we get maybe 2,500 a month. We have 6 different mass times. But back in the day, I mean, it used to be full at all those services, if you go back to the 50s and 60s. So it's kind of sad. And I think secularism has a lot to do with it. I'm very much, people at times get the church wrong, specifically the Catholic Church. We believe in evolution and things. We're not fundamentalists. Catholics are not fundamentalist Christians. We don't take the Bible literally. Obviously, some things are literal, things Jesus said, but we believe in evolution. We believe in science. But at times, I know several the Jesuit priests in our faith. They're educators, and some of them are scientists and astrologers. And so, like, I believe there's always that, well, you can't be for science and be for the church. Yes, you can. Actually, God reveals himself through science. So, but I feel like some of it is a product of many things when you talk about nihilism, you know. Um, it's education sometimes, you know, the left at times does tend to be anti, well, fundamentalist Christian. And yes, there's a lot wrong with some of that, 100%. You know, you and your faith for sure have had the stereotypes, you know, we all do, you know, and it's
Yeah,
sad
yeah,
because
definitely.
people judge us and they don't know what we actually believe. You know, it's funny, you know, I have some Arabic and Muslim friends, many, here in Tucson, as well as in California. And, you know, it's funny, we believe a lot of the same things people don't realize. And
Yeah,
so I'm familiar with your faith, not as well as you are, but I know that we both hold like Mary in a high regard, the mother of God, you know, Jesus. And I know you have admiration for Jesus, and we believe in the same God. You and I believe in the same God. We call him Yahweh, you know. And so, but it's the same God. And actually, Catholicism, there's a document of Vatican II, which happened in the 60s when they changed the church quite a bit. But it's called Lumen Gentium. But we specifically refer to the Muslim faith and saying that we are worshiping the same God. So, so many people don't realize that, you know, quick to judge and say, oh, if you're Christian, if you're not a Christian, you're going to burn in hell. No, that's not what we say. So,
yeah, no, yeah,
but
yeah.
you know, and people think, oh, you with the Catholics, you worship the saints and you pray, you worship Mary, you worship the Pope. You know, no, no, you know. So it's just like anything, it's getting the correct message of what we are, you know, and what how we choose to live out our faith and how the Almighty has revealed Himself to each of us. I think it's special and it's unique. I mean, we have a personal relationship with the Lord, you know, and I think He reveals Himself. I think that's honestly, I think God has a sense of humor, and this is why a lot of this stuff. Because he's trying to see, what will they do? How are they going to treat each other? Specifically, you know, Jesus himself says, in my father's house, there are many mansions. So it's there, you know, but we choose to say, oh no, no, it's this. It's only this, and I know it. Okay, you know it. Great. I don't know. I'm a mere speck in the eye of of a piece of sand of what it all is. And we won't know until we're there, right? Until we actually you know, are hopefully part of eternity. And so I love people that know exactly what's going to happen. Because they don't. They don't. It's revealed to us for sure, but we don't know, right? That's part of the journey. It's being revealed to us, right? And we're only flesh and blood. You know, it's a lot. It's very what's the word? You know, you can't experience it all with the flesh and blood. You know, this is just how we experience it as we walk in this journey. You know, so yeah. But I'm
Yeah,
very
you
passionate
can't
about
have.
religion
Yeah,
and philosophy and stuff. It's what I study a lot of philosophy specifically, and you know, so I like to have conversations with people that say they're atheists, and you know, kind of get down to, well, you do believe in something. You live your life in a way for one thing or another. You just got to figure out what your God is. You know, what it is that you're banking on, because we all do. You know, no matter what we claim we do or don't do. You know, everyone has something that dictates how they live their life, right? What they think right and wrong is. So yeah.
yeah, yeah. No, I agree. I couldn't agree more. You know, with everything you just said. Especially for me, I definitely don't think I can talk about my own faith without talking about the previous ones that came before it. I own a copy of the King James Bible. I was
Mhm.
opening it and reading a lot of it for a period of time, just to, a, a lot of stuff intrigues me about Christianity. I tell this to people all the time when I've gone to the sepulcher and the nativity. There's something I feel there that I don't feel when I've gone to any mosque or the Wailing Wall. It like I feel like a presence in there, whether one wants to say that it is the Holy Spirit, or if it's someone who, like you and I, like, because I definitely agree that it is the same God.
Mhm.
in the sense, and the people who want to dictate, this is what it is, this is what that is. It's the difference between being religious and being faithful. And and it's kind of like people who can go to school and get straight A's. That doesn't mean you're smart. And if you can't philosophically talk about your faith and the ideas that come with it, and because maybe you're not someone who, obviously someone like me who hasn't even read the entire Quran. I probably haven't even read like a 16th of it, honestly. Like I've
Wow.
opened it and I've gotten uh um lessons from it. I've definitely been exposed to majority of it, but for me to sit down and actually, read and dissect it for my own sake, I've been trying to do a lot better. I hold both a Quran that's translated in English and the Bible at all times, just because, like I said, I don't think
Yes.
one can be discussed without the other. Um,
Hmm. Sure,
and
sure.
uh, and yeah, like you said, regarding, um we're experiencing this, we're flesh and blood.
Right.
We can't have our cake and eat it at the same time, and because if that's the case, then what are we doing here? What is, if you truly know, the truths of the universe, and where God is, where you're going to go after this life, what are we still doing here? Like, if
Right. Correct.
but yeah, no, I couldn't agree more with everything. My timer did go off while you were
Okay.
explaining all that. I just wanted to leave off with just one last thing. What
Yes,
sort
sir.
of, if you were talking to a person like Clav, and you just want to offer them a little bit of advice on you know maintaining inner peace and transcendency within yourself, and knowing what to stand for morally, what would you have to say to him?
I would tell him, uh, wow, that's good. I would say, brother, I know these things right now seem important to you, right? Because they're driving something that's giving you good feelings, right? That is making you feel whole. But just like everything in life, things transform and change as time moves on. You need to find something that you can hang on to, because for all of your life here, right, in the physical, but also, if I don't know if he's faithful or not. I'm not sure. I don't follow him really that much, but I've seen him on a few podcasts. But I would say that it seems to me like there's something missing. I don't know what that is, but that he is seeking this acceptance, right? And that if he did study some sort of faith and figured out what is something that is eternal, that gives him value, right? That gives him acceptance, that gives him love, quite frankly. um that's what I think he's missing. I mean, it's very easy for any one of us to get caught up into that in the moment, right? But moments pass, right? I know, Zaid, I follow you on YouTube, and I know you're very involved in jujitsu and kickboxing. Believe it or not, I had a brown belt in judo many years ago.
Oh wow, oh
I
wow,
still know
very
some of the
cool.
moves.
No,
Yeah, never got the black belt. I stopped doing it. But when I was very young, when I was a lot younger, and so I was intrigued with that with you. But I'd say that he needs to find something that is going to offer him nourishment for the entire journey, not something that will pass, right? I've watched a little bit some of his things, how he treats like his girlfriends, and it's like, you need to partner with your spouse or your loved one, as a partner to journey with through this life. So I feel like he's very much on the superficial level, and there's not a lot of depth past the looks. I watch many people say what he's done. He looks older than he actually is, and he does. So, I pray for people like that, but it's because I think they have lack of depth with something spiritual, right? They're missing that. And it's important to find that because, you know, he could be diagnosed with something horrible tomorrow. And what do you have to go to give you strength, to get you through the challenges of life? I mean, I would be dead if I did not have my faith. Many times over, it has walked me through the darkest parts of my life, right? And probably will in the future as well. So you need something forever to kind of hang on to and to ride with you, right?
Couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. James, thank you so much for
Yeah,
doing this again. I really appreciate it. Really
yeah,
quick,
yeah.
tell people where they can find you, if you have other
Yeah,
websites or
I'm on
anything.
LinkedIn, James Lemas. I do have a YouTube, but I don't post on there yet. I'm thinking about it. You're inspiring me, Zaid. So we'll see.
Cool, cool. No, and I do want to say thank you really quick for just all the engagement all the time on, LinkedIn and
Absolutely.
on YouTube. It makes me feel really good. And, I
I like your
definitely,
content. Yeah, good
I
content.
appreciate it. I
Mm.
appreciate it so much.
Looking
Thank you.
forward to your
So
match. I saw that. Yeah,
thank
so
you. Yeah, I appreciate that. Hopefully, all goes well leading up to it. Hopefully, it doesn't fall through or anything, but definitely, keep you up to date on how
cool.
it goes and,
And God
so
bless you during
well,
your holy time. We'll be praying for your faith,
cool.
and this is a holy time for
Likewise,
you.
yeah.
Mm.
Absolutely. Yeah, likewise. I'll make sure to include you in my
Thank
prayers
you.
and, all your loved ones as well. Thank you again so much, James. Appreciate it.
Okay. All right, brother. Have a good day.
You too. See you. Hey everyone, thanks again for watching. It means a lot. Don't forget again to subscribe, like, dislike, leave a positive comment, leave a negative comment. I don't care. Thanks again for watching. We'll catch you next time.